The story being sold across the Carolinas is calm, confident, and comforting. You are told this region is different, protected, almost immune. Agents talk about endless migration, strong job growth, and a housing market that supposedly bends but never breaks. But when you step away from the talking points and look at the data, a very different reality appears, and it is already unfolding. Over the past several months, I have been digging into local MLS reports, inventory trends, price reductions, days on market, and investor activity across North and South Carolina. What I've found does not resemble a healthy market cooling down. It looks like the early phase of a correction that most people are not emotionally prepared for, because the old narrative is still loud and reassuring. This is not about what might happen next year if conditions change. It is about what is happening right now while optimism remains high. Inventory is building quietly. Sellers are cutting prices carefully. Buyers are hesitating longer than they used to be. And the most dangerous part is that these signals are easy to ignore if you want to believe the Carolinas are bulletproof. Housing corrections do not announce themselves. They do not arrive with panic or headlines. They begin with silence, then small concessions, then the slow realization that equity is not guaranteed. The people who get hurt are rarely the first to sell. They are the last to accept that the story has changed. In this investigation, I am going to walk you through 10 Carolina cities where that shift is already visible in the numbers. Stay with me until number 2, where new construction is quietly piling up, and number 1, where a coastal market investors once loved is unraveling faster than anyone expected. This is not designed to scare you. It is designed to give you clarity, timing, and leverage while others are still relying on hope. Subscribe and hit the bell because this channel tracks market risk before headlines catch up. Pay attention now because early awareness often separates protected homeowners from trapped ones later financially. Housing crashes rarely begin with fear. They begin with friction. In the Carolinas, that friction started when interest rates jumped and quietly shattered affordability. Monthly payments rose faster than incomes, and buyers who once qualified comfortably were suddenly locked out. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Listings stayed optimistic, builders kept pouring concrete, and agents kept repeating the migration story. But math does not negotiate, and pressure always shows up before panic. When affordability collapses, demand does not disappear loudly. It retreats, showing slow. Offers thin out. Buyers hesitate longer. That hesitation is the invisible pivot point. Inventory begins to rise not because everyone wants to sell, but because homes stop moving. What once felt scarce starts to feel abundant, and abundance changes behavior. Buyers stop rushing. Sellers lose leverage without realizing it yet. Then come the price cuts, not dramatic at first, a small reduction, a credit at closing, a rate buy-down. Sellers tell themselves it is tactical, temporary, controlled, but price cuts spread because they have to. One reduction weakens the comparable next door. Appraisals tighten. Negotiations turn aggressive. This is the moment the trend breaks, even though the headlines still sound calm. Next, the investors leave. This is where momentum flips. During the boom, investors absorbed excess supply and propped up prices, betting on appreciation and rent growth. Rising rates, softening rents, and swelling inventory destroy that math. When investors exit, they do not trickle out. They rush, adding supply precisely when demand is weakest. The Carolinas are especially exposed because the boom here leaned heavily on migration hype and speculative building. Prices raced ahead of local wages in many cities, relying on newcomers and investors to bridge the gap. That bridge is now narrowing. Local incomes cannot support peak prices, and out-of-state buyers are pulling back at the same time. Finally, panic selling arrives, but only after realization sets in. Sellers notice neighbors cutting prices. Builders start offering incentives. Days on market stretch. The illusion of safety cracks. By the time headlines confirm prices are falling, leverage is already gone. That is why understanding this chain matters. It gives you timing instead of regret. If you are buying or investing, subscribe and hit the bell, because this is the part of the cycle listings do not explain. And by the time the story changes publicly, the opportunity to protect yourself has usually passed. Understanding this process shifts your identity from hopeful participant to informed decision maker, someone who reads behavior before prices react. That perspective creates options. It allows patience when others rush, caution when others stretch, and confidence to step aside when the risk no longer justifies the reward in this housing cycle today. These next three cities were sold as the safest corners of the Carolina housing market. Affordable, stable, predictable. Places first-time buyers were told they could stretch without risk. That belief is now quietly breaking, not with headlines, but with data that tells a far less comforting story. Number 10, Greensboro, North Carolina. This market earned its reputation as boring in the best possible way. Prices moved slowly, jobs felt steady, and volatility seemed non-existent. Buyers believed affordability alone made it safe, but affordability only protects you when demand stays intact. In Greensboro, demand is thinning. Inventory has been rising steadily, not because owners are rushing to sell, but because homes are no longer moving. Listings linger weeks longer than expected. Price reductions are becoming normal, not rare. Days on market stretch quietly, changing buyer psychology. First time. Buyers hesitate, sensing leverage for the first time in years. The breakdown here is subtle but dangerous. Once buyers stop rushing, sellers lose pricing power. When pricing power disappears, appreciation dies. Greensboro's consequence is not a dramatic crash, but a slow freeze, where equity drains month by month while owners wait for a rebound that never quite arrives. And this is only the beginning. What looks like a local slowdown in Greensboro becomes more unsettling as we move south, where belief in stability runs even deeper. Number 9, Columbia, South Carolina. This was supposed to be insulated by government jobs and university stability, a place where prices might pause but never fall. The data says otherwise. Inventory has climbed sharply while buyer participation has faded. Homes sit longer, even when priced competitively. Price cuts spread because sellers discover demand is thinner than expected. Rentals are loosening, which matters more than most realize. When rental demand softens, investors step back, removing a crucial layer of support. The breakdown in Columbia is participation collapse. Fewer offers, fewer showings, more waiting. The consequence is stagnation. Sellers cling to peak-era prices while buyers have already moved on. That gap slowly bleeds value from the market, leaving owners trapped between hope and reality. Columbia's weakness is quieter, but it sets the stage for an even sharper reversal, because the next city was built almost entirely on future expectations. Number 8, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This city benefited heavily from remote work optimism and spillover demand. Buyers assumed the shift was permanent. It was not. Inventory has surged as affordability tightened and investor interest faded. Homes linger unsold. Price growth flattened, then slipped. Buyers no longer compete. They negotiate. They wait. The breakdown here is expectation shock. Sellers priced homes for a future that never arrived. The consequence is quiet repricing. Listings adjust downward, deals fall apart, and confidence erodes. Winston-Salem shows how quickly a stable-looking market changes once belief breaks and patience replaces urgency. Across all three, the pattern is the same. Markets marketed as safe rarely feel dangerous until liquidity disappears. Buyers sense it first, sellers feel it later, and prices react last. By the time the shift becomes obvious, the window to exit cleanly has narrowed. This stage confuses most homeowners because nothing dramatic has happened yet. No collapse, no headlines, no crisis language, just hesitation, longer timelines, and subtle concessions that quietly reset value. And that discomfort is exactly why these early cracks matter more than the crashes everyone waits for. Pay attention here, because this phase determines who keeps options and who loses them financially today. The shift becomes impossible to ignore at this stage, because the damage is no longer theoretical. These next cities move past cooling and into something colder, where excess supply, speculative behavior, and investor retreat collide. The optimism that once fueled bidding wars is now staring at empty units and silent phones. Number 7. Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville was sold as a lifestyle miracle, a boom town where growth would outrun any slowdown. Developers believed it. Investors believed it. The data now shows the cost of that belief. New construction has surged far beyond organic demand, and inventory keeps stacking as buyers hesitate. Homes that once sparked competition now sit untouched, and price cuts are spreading across both new builds and resales. Rental demand is softening, which removes the safety net investors relied on. The breakdown here is oversupply meeting affordability limits. The consequence is freezing momentum. When builders cannot move inventory, they discount. When builders discount, every existing homeowner loses pricing power. Greenville is learning in real time that hype cannot substitute for wages. Number 6. Asheville, North Carolina. This market reveals what happens when speculation replaces fundamentals. Asheville was never priced for locals. It was priced for investors chasing short-term rental income and lifestyle buyers stretching on emotion. That worked while tourism surged and borrowing was cheap. It breaks when bookings decline, regulations tighten, and costs rise. Inventory here has jumped sharply as investors rush to exit, and many listings are now competing with dozens of similar properties. Rental income no longer covers carrying costs, forcing owners to sell into weakening demand. The breakdown is investor flight. The consequence is forced selling. Asheville feels frozen because buyers know supply will keep coming. Once a market becomes investor-heavy, corrections are rarely gentle. Number 5. Wilmington, North Carolina. This city exposes the real problem hiding beneath most boom narratives. Wilmington did not just grow, it overbuilt for a version of demand that depended on second homes, tourism, and easy money. As insurance costs climbed and rental returns weakened, that demand vanished. Luxury condos and coastal homes now sit vacant, absorbing carrying costs every month. Inventory continues to rise while transaction volume falls, a classic sign of a market seizing up. The breakdown here is collapsing rental math combined with rising ownership costs. The consequence is price gravity. Sellers cut to compete, then cut again, and still struggle to attract serious buyers. Across these 3 cities, the pattern escalates from warning to visible damage. Overbuilding inflated prices beyond what local wages could support. Investors propped up demand temporarily, but temporary demand always leaves first. What remains is excess supply and hesitant buyers. This is the phase where markets stop correcting quietly and start freezing publicly. Listings pile up, days on market stretch. Confidence erodes. This is where many homeowners make their biggest mistake, waiting for a rebound that requires demand that no longer exists. The data does not suggest a quick recovery. It suggests a slow unwind, where prices grind lower as reality replaces optimism. Subscribe and hit the bell, because the top 4 cities show what happens when hype meets math, and the next phase moves from visible damage to undeniable collapse. At this point, the market is no longer correcting in theory but in behavior. Buyers delay decisions, sellers adjust expectations, and investors quietly withdraw capital. The emotional shift is subtle yet decisive. Urgency fades, patience grows, and time begins working against pricing instead of supporting it. This is the moment when denial feels safer than action, even though inaction carries the highest cost. Markets do not reward hope, they reward alignment with reality. Watching these signals early does not make you pessimistic, it makes you prepared, able to move deliberately while others hesitate. That awareness preserves options, protects leverage, and creates space to think clearly, calmly, and strategically while crowded markets react emotionally and too late today now. At this stage, denial becomes difficult to sustain because the data is no longer subtle. These next cities are not cooling, not pausing, and not stabilizing. They are actively breaking. Prices are falling, transaction volume is collapsing, and investor confidence has already cracked. Momentum has fully reversed, and the damage is visible to anyone willing to look. Number 4. Durham, North Carolina. Durham was priced for perfection, tech expansion, research institutions, and high-income migration created the belief that demand would always outrun supply. That belief is now colliding with reality. Inventory has risen sharply while bidding wars have vanished. Homes that once sold instantly now linger, and price reductions are becoming routine. The breakdown here is income mismatch. Local wages cannot support peak prices, and the pool of high-paying buyers has shrunk. The consequence is erosion. Equity bleeds quietly as sellers compete for fewer qualified buyers. This is not a temporary pause. It is a structural reset. Number 3, Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston's collapse is no longer hiding behind charm or prestige. Luxury inventory is piling up. Days on market are stretching, and deals are falling apart before closing. Insurance costs, maintenance expenses, and rising ownership burdens are forcing buyers to walk away. Investors who once paid premiums are now exiting entirely. The breakdown here is cost shock. Ownership no longer feels worth the price. The consequence is visible repricing. Sellers slash asking prices, then wait, then cut again. If you know someone planning to move here, send this to them, because the market they imagined no longer exists. Number 2, Raleigh, North Carolina. This city shows what a full momentum reversal looks like. Raleigh became the symbol of pandemic-era optimism, with massive construction and investor activity, assuming demand would never slow. It did. Inventory has exploded, transaction volume has dropped, and builder incentives are failing to attract buyers. New homes sit unsold, dragging down nearby resale values. The breakdown here is oversupply meeting affordability limits. The consequence is capitulation. When builders cannot move inventory, they discount aggressively, and every existing homeowner pays the price. Across these 3 cities, the pattern is undeniable. Prices are falling, deals are stalling, investors are leaving, delinquencies are rising at the margins, signaling stress beneath the surface. This is not a slowdown, it is a reversal. The market psychology has flipped from urgency to caution, from confidence to calculation. What makes this phase so dangerous is timing. By the time most people accept what is happening, leverage is gone. Sellers are trapped. Buyers are scarce. Equity evaporates quietly. This is why awareness matters now, not later. Subscribe and hit the bell, because number 1 is already breaking, and what happens there will reshape how people view the Carolina housing market entirely. Number 1, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This is the epicenter of the Carolina housing collapse, and by the time most people realize it, the damage will already be locked in. What once looked like endless demand is now exposed as fragile, speculative, and deeply dependent on conditions that no longer exist. For years, Myrtle Beach thrived on tourism, second homes, and short-term rentals. Investors poured in, assuming vacation demand would always cover the mortgage. Prices climbed far beyond what local wages could ever support. But that did not matter while cash was flowing. Then borrowing costs rose, travel demand softened, insurance premiums surged, and the math broke all at once. Inventory here has exploded. Condos sit vacant. Listings stack on top of listings. Price cuts are no longer strategic. They are desperate. Sellers are competing not just with neighbors, but with entire buildings full of unsold units. Each new listing weakens the last, pulling prices lower in slow grinding steps. The collapse of rental income is the trigger most owners did not plan for. When bookings dropped and regulations tightened, properties that once looked profitable turned into monthly liabilities. HOA fees rose. Insurance doubled in some complexes. Carrying costs ballooned just as demand disappeared. That combination forces selling, not by choice, but by necessity. This is where fear becomes reality. Owners realize they cannot refinance, cannot rent, and cannot wait. Buyers sense it too. They delay, negotiate aggressively, or walk away entirely. The market does not clear because supply keeps coming and confidence is gone. What makes Myrtle Beach different from every other city on this list is scale. The oversupply is massive. The buyer pool is shrinking. And the market depends heavily on discretionary spending, which is the first thing people cut when money tightens. That makes this correction self-reinforcing. If you own here, this is not about timing the top anymore. It is about understanding the direction. The belief that this market would always recover has already broken. You can feel it in how long homes sit, how deep the cuts go, and how quiet the phones have become. You now see what most people still refuse to acknowledge. This is not a pause, it is an unwind. If you want updates as this market unfolds, subscribe and hit the bell, because what happens next here will ripple outward, changing how investors and homeowners view the Carolinas for years. This moment separates those reacting emotionally from those acting deliberately, because awareness restores choice, preserves leverage, and prevents costly mistakes during uncertainty, allowing you to step back, observe behavior objectively, and decide your next move before the market forces one upon you with calm, informed confidence always. Across all 10 cities, the pattern is no longer subtle. From number 10, Greensboro, to number 1, Myrtle Beach, the same forces repeat with different accents. Prices run ahead of wages, demand is propped up by speculation, and the moment affordability breaks, momentum reverses. What looks like a local problem is actually a systemic one playing out city by city across the Carolinas. Greensboro and Winston-Salem showed how safe markets freeze when buyers hesitate. Columbia revealed how participation collapses when rentals soften. Greenville exposed what overbuilding does to pricing power. Asheville proved that investor-driven markets unwind faster than they rise. Wilmington demonstrated how insurance and carrying costs can kill demand overnight. Durham showed what happens when tech optimism outruns reality. Charleston made it clear that charm cannot offset rising costs. Raleigh confirmed that oversupply always wins. And Myrtle Beach showed the full consequence of speculation, meeting shrinking discretionary spending. The lesson here is not fear, it is framework. You do not need to predict the future to protect yourself. You need better questions than most buyers ask. Wherever you are considering buying or investing, start with this checklist. Are prices supported by local incomes or by hype and outside money? Is inventory rising while homes sit longer? Are price cuts becoming normal instead of rare? Are investors pulling back or offering incentives? Are insurance, HOA, or ownership costs rising faster than rents or wages? And most importantly, is demand organic or dependent on conditions that can disappear quickly? If you answer those questions honestly, markets begin to reveal themselves. Housing does not crash randomly. It cracks where belief breaks first. The people who lose the most are not the reckless ones, but the hopeful ones who assume time is on their side. Now I want to hear from you. Which city do you think breaks next and why? Drop it in the comments and challenge each other's assumptions. If there is another Carolina city you want me to investigate, say the name. I will keep tracking inventory, prices, and behavior as this cycle unfolds. Subscribe and hit the bell, because I will keep posting updated market breakdowns as the data changes. And early awareness is still the only real advantage left in this market. That awareness transforms uncertainty into strategy, replacing fear with patience, clarity, and control, even as volatility increases and headlines lag reality for most people.